order. This is the March 7, 2016 public hearing of the Finance and Warrant Commission. I'd like to ask everyone to rise. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I see that Westcat is here, and we will grant permission to Westcat to videotape the meeting. Is there anyone else who would like to record the meeting? I see no affirmative responses. At the outset, I will say that we typically schedule 2 days for our public hearings. We usually can get everything done in one night. However, this year, with such a large agenda, we decided at our last meeting that we would definitely have 2 nights of hearings. The superintendent of schools is scheduled to address us tomorrow night. So as a result, and in fairness to commission members, this is not going to be a very late night here, because we're going to spread it out as evenly as we can over the next 2 nights. So we may or may not get to the planning board articles tonight, but at a minimum, we are going to get to the petition article regarding Dover Terrace, the historic commission article, and the board of selectmen articles. So without further ado, I would invite Mr. Casalino, the Dover Terrace petitioner, to address us.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. I came out here tonight to speak with all the members of the various committees, as well as my fellow Westwood citizens, about a safety issue in our neighborhood that is affecting several people. The residents of Dover Terrace and the surrounding neighborhoods have an urgent issue regarding public safety. An immediate resolution must be made regarding the safety issue. Our neighborhood remains unsafe for all. This has caused a hardship for many Westwood residents. We're all obligated to keep our children safe. Our town has several policies in our school system and in the many sports that I personally have coached. We go to different background checks, we go through videos on concussions. There's a large emphasis on safety. This is also a safety matter, and in fact, it's a very serious safety matter and cannot be ignored. For the duration of over 63 years, Dover Terrace Extension has been a safe way and access into towns, schools, fields, libraries, town events. Due to recent events, this passage has been taken away from our community. There is now a fence blocking Dover Terrace Extension, which has now left our neighbors in an unsafe environment. The fence has forced our families and children to use an extremely unsafe alternative, Dover Road. Dover Road is a very curved, blind spot, narrow, fast road in our town. If you can see it, the first picture, that's a picture of looking up at Dover Road towards 109 from the end of Dover Terrace. As you can see, you cannot see if there's a car coming. This is a picture without snow on the sides. When there's snow on the sides, it becomes even more dangerous. Right now, kids are using that because they have no other way to get in and out, to and from 109 to go to school, library, or after-school events to come home. Here's another picture showing the road. Clearly, there's a blind spot there. If you look on the map here, from where Dover Road starts to where Dover Terrace starts, you've got a complete blind spot. Matter of fact, if you drew a line from the start of Dover Terrace, where Dover Road ends, to the end of Dover Terrace to 109, it would be a straight line, and you'd have pretty much a half moon there. Impossible to see. Possible for the cars to see the pedestrians, impossible for the pedestrians to see the cars. And again, this is without snow. Here's a picture of, another picture of the view. So in 1947, when Dover Terrace was first developed, there's a map here depicting Dover Terrace, and at the end, there's a circle which was used for the trucks to rotate while they were developing the neighborhood. At the end of that circle, you see a stub that comes out. The stub indicates the continuation when another neighborhood is going to be developed. That was 1947. In 1952, in 1952, clearly you see that Dover Terrace ends at Birch Tree Drive. And if you look at Dover Terrace, it has dotted lines at Birch Tree Drive and at the end of that circle. Dotted lines in all the maps in Westwood indicate that it passes through. If it was a solid line, it indicates that it doesn't. So, as we continue, Dover Terrace, Lorraine Road, Conant Road, Lynn Terrace, Dover Road are just a few of the many neighborhoods that have relied on this access for over 63 years. There are several families with children, grandchildren, seniors that have used this way as part of their lives since Dover Terrace and Birch Tree Drive have been developed. There has been several attempts for us to speak with the new owners of 120 Birch Tree Drive to come up with a resolution in keeping the neighborhood families and children safe. Unfortunately, these several attempts have concluded in no resolution of the many that have been proposed. Because of this immediate concern, Westwood residents have approached the town of Westwood and asked for their help in keeping our families safe. I want to bring your attention to I don't have it on the slide, but a speed summary report was recently conducted and generated by Sergeant Paul Sicard, who was a safety officer here in town. 9 days of travel were indicated on this report, and anyone who would like to see it can see this. Between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 a.m., and the hours of 2 p.m. and 5 p.m., precisely the time when children go to and from school, during the 9-day study, the speed limit violations reached up to 66% on Dover Road. The lowest during that time was in the 40s. In fact, in 9 days, 6,838 total vehicles passed through Dover Road. Of those, 3,807 were violations with the recorded meter. The percentage of violations is 55.7. I'm not a safety officer myself, but if anybody here is from safety committee or anything that would like to speak on that, feel free. The Dover Road has been confirmed that it's dangerous because in the past, in the recent past, Westwood has gone through extreme measures and installed speed humps to try and slow traffic down. Because of the blind curves, no sidewalks, and heavy traffic, the road is extremely dangerous from Dover Terrace to High Street for pedestrians. We actually have asked the town to consider putting a sidewalk on Dover Road. In speaking with the Westwood DPW, the expense of putting a sidewalk would exceed $250,000, as well as it may not be wide enough to do so. If there's anyone here from DPW that wants to confirm those numbers, please do.
I spoke with Ari. I can't confirm the cost estimate. It's probably going to be approximately $250,000 or slightly greater.
Thank you. We had asked the town to help us find an alternative safe route. The town of Westwood performed this common project on Dover Road due to the traffic volume. The project results indicated that measures needed to be taken. The town took extreme action by adding the speed humps. Again, because of the blind curves, heavy traffic, the road is dangerous. This is what used to be the access for 63 plus years from Dover Terrace to Birch Tree Drive. This is a clear picture of a pathway between two residences on the side of the house. This pathway was like this, again, for over 60 years. Now it's taken away. If you look on the map, this is current zoning map, the indication that the street goes through from Dover Terrace to Birch Tree Drive is still there. In fact, when I purchased my home on Dover Terrace, one of the reasons why I wanted to purchase was in a neighborhood that the school system considers a walking neighborhood to the middle school and high school. On the school system's map, it shows Dover Terrace as a walking neighborhood. Now, the criteria for a walking neighborhood, as according to the Westwood School Department, is that it needs to be a safe walking neighborhood. If you look at the current zoning maps and the current school maps, it indicates that that is the safe passage, not Dover Road. Now, I have some maps here if anyone wants to look at them afterwards. But if you go through from 1950 at the Registry of Deeds, if you go through from 1950, you clearly see that Dover Terrace extends to Birch Tree Drive. If you look at 1960, you clearly see that Dover Terrace extends to Birch Tree Drive. If you look at 1980, you clearly see the same thing. If you look at 1985, you still see the same thing. If you look at 1996, which apparently is an important date because some people have said that this road changed in 1990. If you look at 1996, it still shows that the road goes to Birch Tree Drive. And the road is still named Dover Terrace, although at this point it changed to Dover Terrace Extension. The safety issue is one which, this isn't my normal forum to come out and speak to people, but I would not be able to live with myself if something happened to someone knowing how dangerous this is. I'd be mortified. If I don't come out and fight as hard as I can for safe access, and someone were to get hurt or worse, I would feel guilty. In fact, this has been put out in a public forum, recorded, put out. So many people are aware of this danger. We don't want this to be resolved when it's too late and have a memorial instead of a safe access. We want to take care of this so that the neighborhood, children, seniors, friends that come over, grandchildren that come over, kids go after school, they go to sporting events, they go to the library, they have no way of getting in. When we purchased our homes and other people in our area purchased their homes, we knew this as an in-town walking to school neighborhood. It's been changed. A matter of fact, we have on our street people that have lived there for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. We even have people that have lived there for over 50 years. And they have confirmed that this has been the way people went in and out of town safely. All we're asking for is a safe route. We're not looking for a striped road with signs and lights and all that. We just need a safe access. Whatever the width is that you can push a baby stroller or walk. We're not looking for anything more than that. It's a very reasonable request. I would imagine that everybody in this room feels that there's an obligation to keep our kids safe. And right here, there's a perfect resolution to do that. There's an easy resolution. Actually, the town of Westwood has adopted complete streets. Complete streets was adopted by the Bicycle and Safety Committee, Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Committee, if that's correct, if anyone can tell me that. If there's anyone here from that committee, could you please maybe elaborate on why that was adopted?
It was actually adopted by a town meeting.
By a town meeting.
Actually, Mr. Casarino, if I may, we're going to use our usual format for responses from folks.
Okay, I don't know the usual format.
I know that that you and also the homeowner were given 5 minutes each to make a presentation, so if I could ask you to wrap up, if you would please, so we can move on and make sure that we can hear from everyone who wants to be heard on this.
Sure. I mean, I certainly have a lot more data and a lot more to say, but I think the important part's been said. This is a safety issue that needs to be resolved. So I'd like to at least say, in conclusion, I thank you all for listening tonight. I hope that everybody here understands the gravity of this clear presentation that our neighborhood is faced with. Reopening the path after a tragedy would be too late. Again, we don't want to memorial that. I ask that everybody understands what is a clear and present danger currently for our entire neighborhood and surrounding neighborhoods. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Casarino. I understand that Attorney Andrew Schwartz is here on behalf of the homeowner. If you could please identify yourselves for the record.
Queue up a PowerPoint as well.
Of course.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Andrew Schwartz. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Crowley and Cummings, located in Dedham, Massachusetts. I'd like to thank you for having me here in your beautiful facility. I represent Shane Lawler and Kathleen Lawler, who are the owners of 120 Birch Tree Drive here in Westwood. And they're the property owners for this property that we're discussing today, and the folks that will be affected by this petition that has been brought. I'd like to start by saying that certainly the Lawlers are concerned about safety in this town. They have 4 young children who attend school in this town. They moved to this town a few years ago because it was a nice, safe town. And to suggest that they are not concerned about safety is frankly just a complete false misstatement. I just want to make that perfectly clear right from the outset. Also, the Lawlers don't dispute that Dover Road may be a dangerous road. We saw the pictures, we've all driven on Dover Road, we're all familiar with it.
Yes.
But the remedy for that is not to take the Lawler's property by eminent domain. That is not the remedy for an unsafe road. There are many other options. There was mention made of potential of extending sidewalks, or the sidewalk on Dover Road. The figure, I have no idea whether this is accurate or not, but the figure of $250,000 was mentioned. Well, the Lawlers purchased their property for $764,000. And if their property is taken, it's going to have a significant and serious diminishment of their value of their property that they purchased. Also, traffic enforcement. Maybe people are speeding on Dover Road. Well, perhaps the remedy for that is greater police enforcement, not the taking of private property. Some of us here may know what eminent domain is, but some of us here may not know what eminent domain is. So I just wanted to mention that very quickly. Eminent domain is a concept that dates all the way back to the English crown, where the king could just ride in on his horse and take whoever's property he wanted for whatever purpose. When this country was established, the framers of the U.S. Constitution and of the Massachusetts Constitution recognized that that was obviously an abuse of power, and they greatly limited what a government could do by eminent domain. The legislature grants cities and towns, such as the town of Westwood, the power to take property by eminent domain, but that's a very limited power. It can only be exercised for a valid, legitimate public purpose. There's a high bar for that. And that's a purpose for the general public, not for the benefit of a few residents, a limited public purpose. There's no economic benefit to this. This is a petition that's brought by a few residents. I think we saw the map, there are 10 properties on Dover Terrace. Now, some mention was made that people from other streets may be using this as well, but I'll remind you, those streets don't have sidewalks. So they're still taking their so-called dangerous action. If you're coming from Lorraine Road, if you're coming from those other streets, you're still not walking on a street with sidewalks. The law in Massachusetts is clear about eminent domain. There are hundreds of years of cases that talk about eminent domain. There are numerous examples, actually, of the Superior Court invalidating takings that were made that were not deemed to be legitimate. And when a property owner's property is taken by eminent domain, they have the right to file suit in Superior Court to not only challenge the amount of just compensation that they're receiving, because they must be paid just compensation. If a city or town or government takes property, they must justly compensate the property owner. But the property owner can also bring action in Superior Court, and even if the taking is later found to be invalid or unconstitutional, which I would suggest that this is, they may be able to get damages from that. This petition, I remind you, was not initiated by town officials. This was initiated by a group of citizens. And in fact, town council, Mr. McCusker, who is here tonight, has examined the title to this property and rendered an opinion that directly refutes what Mr. Casarino said a few minutes ago. This is the town's attorney who's been town council for 40 some odd years, or close to 4 years, I don't want to give too much, too many years of service. But what Mr. Casarino has shown you and said is a map. This is not a map, ladies and gentlemen. He may call it a map, but the plan, which is right here, which you can all look at, is the 1952 plan that was recorded at the Registry of Deeds by the developer Ira Barlow. And it's just that, it's a plan. You can put anything on a plan that you plan to do. It doesn't mean that it actually exists in reality. Mr. Attorney McCusker has given his opinion that this was never a roadway, never a way, never a road of any kind. Even if Mr. Barlow maybe intended to develop it as a way, he abandoned that development. You can put anything you want on a plan, it doesn't mean it exists in real life. You can have an easement that's shown on a plan, for example. But if the easement is not actually granted at the Registry of Deeds, that easement does not legally exist. You can have an easement on a plan that is later revoked or is later abandoned. So just because we have these pictures that were drawn showing an intent to maybe put a road through someday, doesn't mean it actually did. And if people may or may not have crossed over what was and always was private property, then they were trespassing. And it's undisputed, and Attorney McCusker will confirm, as he's given his opinion to the town, this has always been private property. The Lawlers purchased it, they paid fair market value for it, they have a mortgage just like most of us, they pay their taxes in this town faithfully, and they have a right to live there peacefully and enjoy their property that they paid for with their children. This is not a large lot by Westwood standards, this is not a large home by Westwood standards. These are hardworking folks who have 4 children who just want to live their life and not have God knows who traipsing through their yard at all hours of the day, possibly. I'd like to briefly introduce Mr. Lawler. He's going to say a few words to you as well.
Andy, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for your time today. It's not something I planned on being here to do, but obviously I have to do it. So basically, we looked at the house. I'll make it very quick. We only had 5 minutes. Appreciate your time. We looked at the house. We did detailed research. We noticed that there was 2 parcels of land. We checked. We had actually Andy and his team spent a day looking at all the lots, coming back, making sure everything was clean. So it was perfectly clean. There was a stone wall. I'm going to show you a picture in a second from Google Maps. There was a stone wall and a fence. The land that they're talking about, you can nod your head if you like, the land that they're talking about was on a hill going upwards. There was poison ivy. I wouldn't let my kids go over near it because they could fall down. So let me show you some pictures from Google Maps. So we bought the house, we did a research, and I just want to show you if I can, sorry, there you go. So if you look at there was no obvious pathway, there was a stone wall, the land was rocky, and again, on this property, there's no backyard, the only thing is the front yard, and we bought it with the intent of developing the front yard. The minute we got in, we got trees removed, we put up a fence, and this is when this issue came about. This is a Google Maps looking at the site from the sky, obviously. You can see it, there's no obvious pathway. I put black lines there so you can see.
Point out where your house is.
Our house is there with the red umbrella. See, that's the house, and these are the black lines that they're talking about it being a pathway. This is a picture from Dover Terrace. That is what you see. Do you see a pathway? Do you see, if I go closer up, you're going to see a stone wall.
There is a stone wall there.
Yeah.
There's a stone wall and fence. So that is what you see. That's from 2012, before we bought the house. We saw that when we looked at the house. We did not see any pathway. So the other things we just have to consider, there is safety issues. We 100% agree there's safety issues. There's also safety issues. Dover, your Birch Street Drive is a dangerous street. I was driving there last night and nearly hit somebody. Not that I was going fast. It's very dark, it's a windy, and it has a loop on it. So it's not as safe. There's no sidewalks in Dover. Birch Street, excuse me, there's no sidewalks there. Then if you think about putting a pathway there, what does it do the residents of 120, 130 Birch Street? It has its own safety issues. Pathways are hanging out for teenagers, for kids drinking. I know when I was a kid I brought up there a pathway, I know what it brings. I wasn't one of them. And also the other thing is that Dover Tree residents, 40 different Dover Tree residents Birch Tree residents do not want a pathway. If you want to look at their signatures, they do not want a pathway coming through into their neighborhood. So,
yeah, and it just, I know we're limited on time, and I appreciate your indulgence, but there were also things that were said at the last meeting that lawyers weren't here, so I hope we can get a little bit more consideration on that basis.
I would just like to limit you both to 15 minutes, so a couple more minutes.
Sure, absolutely. So just think it bears mentioning that this is a very slippery slope, folks. When we saw that original map that showed the Dover Road, I mean, clearly there, you could cut through other people's yards. There are probably countless streets in the town of Westwood that would it be more convenient, more direct to cut through people's yards? Sure, maybe people do. But that is not a legitimate reason for the town to take a property by eminent domain. What the petition is basically asking is for the town to spend its money. You want this commission to authorize the expenditure of public funds to take private property. That's what's being asked here. And once that happens, that could open up Pandora's box. There could be many other properties where somebody could bring a petition next year or the year after that may affect some of you if they feel it's more advantageous or more convenient. So we ask you, members of the commission, to vote against this article. We're, again, mindful of safety. We're sympathetic to children, and it also bears mentioning that Dover Terrace does get a school bus. Is that correct?
Incorrect.
Information on that.
Incorrect. The middle school and high school does not provide school bus for Dover Terrace.
But the elementary schools do.
The elementary schools do. The middle school and high school do
Well,
not.
there are probably a lot of other streets that don't get a school bus. Are we going to allow paths from all of those other streets across private property just because they live on streets that don't get a school bus? I think you see where I'm going with that. So, thank you for your time. If you have any other questions, we'll be here. And thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. I will note that the commission did hear from Mr. Casarino at one of our last meetings, and the commission did ask town council for an opinion on this, which we did receive, which provides that town council has researched the matter thoroughly, had a title examiner research it as well, and its conclusion is that the property in question has always been, I'm reading it to you, has always been privately owned, was never a town road, and no rights of way across the property have been granted. With that, I will open it up to the commission for questions. Great.
Actually, a question for town council. If the board of selectmen had come to you and wanted to do this eminent domain taking in this exact situation, how would you advise them? Would you advise them this was a valid or an invalid eminent domain taking?
If the town meeting voted the article as written, my opinion is it would be a valid taking. But the town meeting can only give the selectmen authority to make a take. The town meeting cannot direct the selectmen to make the take. So in the event that this article should pass, then the selectmen would make a determination as to whether or not they want to do it.
So you would say it would be a valid?
Oh, yes. The article is drafted, the article is called
Right.
taking or public taking, which does not mean that the property owner would challenge that report.
Any other questions from FinCom? With that, I will open it up to members of the public for comments.
Hi, my name is PJ Prosh, or Paul Prosh, I go by both. I live at 130 First Street Drive. Oh, sorry, I thought it was not there. You know, it's said that the Irish don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. Today, I'd like you to please let the facts get in the way of a good story. About me, I've lived in Westwood for 9 years, 5 years at the current residence. I'm on the Westwood Youth Softball Board. I coach softball, soccer. I care a lot about the kids of this town. I donated over 8 hours of my free time last year helping the kids of Westwood. I watched the YouTube video as well. And, okay. Oh, that's right. The board has some pictures. Unfortunately, we don't have it for everyone else. The first page in it, you'll see a picture of the Dover Terrace end. And the second page is, it comes out a little bit so you can't see it as well. Mr. Casarino mentioned many times serious safety issues. If we can look at the presentation, which we can't, you'll see, well, as you saw in the picture, it's not safe. There's a rock wall, there's a fence. Is that safe during rain? Is that safe during snow? No, it wasn't a path. And you notice the Google timestamp was 3.5 years old. Barriers are created for 2 reasons: to keep things out and to keep things in. There are 2 barriers there to keep things out. Watching the video of FinCon in January at timestamp 3:45, the meeting, you were asked, Dover Terrace, is it connected to Birch Tree Drive? Mr. Casarino said yes. And timestamp 4:35, he was asked, were people cutting through yards? He does not directly answer this question, adding, well, I believe that's the way people got to Birch Street. At timestamp 4:55, he was asked, is the fence on private property? He states, I don't know. The Lawlers and the Casarinos were acquaintances at their old block. He knew that. I think he probably knew the answer to that. His kids don't go to Deerfield. In the books on 3, 4, and 5 in there, you'll see the school bus list, and you'll see for elementary school and junior high, there is a stop at Dover Road and Dover Terrace. At the high school, it stops on High Street. It's probably because there's no high schools on Dover Terrace. So there is a stop, which contradicts what he said. It's funny, he mentioned the stroller issue again. Would someone with a stroller be able to get over a rock wall and a fence? This would only benefit 11 houses. At timestamp 1440, it says, residents I've spoken to on Dover Terrace and the surrounding neighborhoods are only looking for safe access to and from town. Only 6 of the 11 people who live on that block signed that petition, the article. And that makes up 11 people. The other 29 signatories on that article, only 1 lived in the Deerfield footprint. The rest were in the Sheehan district for the most part. And this will only benefit Dover Terrace Like Lawler's lawyer said, people still have to cut through Dover Road in order to get to Dover Terrace. And there is a sidewalk from High Street to Lorraine, and High Street to Lorraine is about halfway from High Street to Dover Terrace. So there already is partially a walkway there, and that wasn't stressed or mentioned at the January meeting or today. So they knew what they were getting into when they moved to that neighborhood. Obviously, you drive to the end of the road, you see a rock wall, you see a fence, you see trees. How would people think you could just walk through there unless they were told that by, I don't know, their realtor? If that's an issue with the realtor, they should take it out with them. Of the 3 of the 6 houses that signed the article live on the east side of Dover Terrace, and their house is directly abut High Street. I'm wondering if they talked to anyone on High Street to see if they can cut through their property. And on maps 6 and 7 of the package, you'll see there's a dead end that ends right behind Dover Terrace, 14 Dover Terrace. And on the assessor map, on page 8, you'll see there's easements going halfway back to 14 Dover Terrace. Have they exhausted that possibility? And there's no sidewalks on First Street Drive like Mr. Cassarino mentioned in January meeting. Well, he kind of flip-flopped a little bit there, but there's no sidewalks on First Street. Also on pages 11 and 12 of that book, you notice pictures of the corner of Barlow and First Street Drive. And in those pictures, you'll see there's not a good view around there. There's lots of high bushes, and it's easy to get in trouble with cars. I walk my dog twice a day, usually twice a day, and I've almost gotten hit many a time by residents and people visiting. It gets a little scary right near that corner, and even around turns. There are people always flying on the corner. I mean, people do it, it's not right, but it happens. Also, on a personal issue, this path would be 22 feet from the side of my house and 30 feet from the first floor, spare bedroom, and the bathroom. So basically, people will be walking 10 yards from my window. It's also 30 feet and 1 floor down from my daughter's window. And on page 13 of the book is a picture from my daughter's window, and it's basically anyone could look up from that picture, from standing right on this pathway. So I'd just like to let people know, see how people feel if this was their house.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Yes, and please identify yourself.
My name's Kate LaCroix,
And your
Dover, and live in Dover. So I just wanted to offer a perspective from someone who also lives on Dover or on or off of Dover Road. That I definitely agree, there's a safety issue. In fact, hi Todd. I'm working with the DPW and the town engineer and the police department to try to see if we can get more speed bumps put in down at my end of Dover Road, which is at the Dover line. It's definitely an issue. I have 2 small kids. I worry about it all the time. Cars fly by. So I don't dispute the fact that it's a dangerous road. However, all of us who bought on Dover Road knew what we were getting into when we bought there. It doesn't have a sidewalk. There's no shoulder to speak of. I'm working with the town and proper authorities to try to get that remedied. I can't quite understand why one individual family and their private property should be held responsible for what's really a town problem. I certainly would never think of asking my neighbors if I could cut through their backyards to get into town. We drive or we deal with it however we need to, but we all knew what we were getting into when we bought on Dover Road, so it's not on one family to fix that.
Thank you. Sounds like he's back there. Please tell us your name and where you live. Yes, sir.
Brian Hoff, Sixton Ave. Keeping with the theme of public safety here, is there anybody here from the fire department that might want to lend some insight as to whether or not Dover Terrace is sufficiently accessible should there be a fire and sufficient turnaround for a fire truck?
I don't see anyone here that's prepared to address that.
I think
sir.
that may be something they should check into, because if you can't get a fire engine up there with sufficient turnaround in the vehicle, we do have a serious public safety issue.
Apologies.
Yes,
This is Tony Mullen, 126 Pond Street. Apologies if this has been discussed before. Do we have any estimate of how much we would have to pay Mr. Lawler if he did take the property by eminent domain? I think that's an important piece of data, given the town's finances are a bit stretched.
I can only lend this to that. This is the current assessors. And we can, pass it out, I know, for everybody. It still calls that Dover Terrace.
I would object to Mr. Casarino providing information. He's not qualified as an expert on value or.
I said this came from the town assessor's map. I didn't say I was qualified.
Gentlemen, excuse me, we're gonna adhere to the rules that we have here,
Understood.
okay?
That's
So,
information that
Thank you very much.
pertains to that question.
Thank you, sir. We're going to keep this very courteous and professional, and everyone's going to wait a turn. So who else would, oh, Craig, go ahead.
I'm not sure if this is best for Mr. Gillette or town council, but there's no funding attached to this article. So how would the mechanics of that work if in fact this passed at town meeting?
In the event that it passed, then, and in the event that the selectmen decided to exercise the authority given to them by the town meeting, at that point, we would have to have an appraisal done of the property that was taken. Because once we take something by eminent domain, we have to have reasonable compensation. I would expect that as the work is going through, we would have to go back to the subsequent town meeting to obtain.
Other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, I'm Mary Crasha, and I live at 131st Street Drive, and my husband just spoke, TJ. We bought our house there 6 years ago, and it was the 6th house that we looked at First Street Drive. We love that street. We lived there for many years and finally settled on this one because it is a closed street. It's a great neighborhood to raise our families in, but there was no path there, and there was no access from Dover Terrace. Had there been, we never would have bought our house there because we don't want to be next to a public pathway. And it is a concern, a big concern for our children and our daughter, and having, the bedrooms there, and we don't want people just coming through all the time. I don't think that it's fair to ask or to forcibly take land from somebody for your own good when when you buy a house, you should look at all of that stuff and you know how you're getting in and out of your street and your house. And there can be accommodations made. There is now a bus stop there for the middle school because another resident on Dover Terrace called and asked them to add a bus stop and they said, oh no. Not everybody on Dover Terrace wants this. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Thank you. Let me see if there's anyone else served first. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard on this? Yes, sir.
Yes, David Edel, I live at 136 Birch Tree Drive, which is 2 lots up from the lot in question, and we've been there 39 years. So we are aware of when it was the old days when there was a path through there. I did use it when I would ride my bike over to the park. It was never a paved path. It was always rough. It had roots and rocks and so forth. I don't know the date that it was purchased by a resident in that home that the Lawlers are now in, but I'm thinking it was in the 90s sometime that it was actually purchased by, I think, Jack Troy purchased it from Barlow, and it became part of that property and became private property. In the time that there were people passing through that area, we quite often had groups of teenagers that would come through there, and it wasn't unusual to find beer cans and trash and all kinds of stuff along that path through there. I don't understand why there isn't a crosswalk across Dover Terrace to the other side to pick up that side where there is a path from, or a sidewalk from Lorraine up to High Street. At very least, that would at least get the kids across the street in a safe crosswalk. Plus, the statistics of the speed coming up Dover Terrace have to be moderated by the fact that you're very close to arriving at a stop sign at High Street. I don't know how fast you can be coming up there when you know you're going to hit a stop sign. It's just anecdotal, but just an opinion.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else? Mr. Casarino?
Yes. Well, it's clear that this gentleman, and we have several people who have lived in the neighborhood for a long time, just confirmed that in fact there was a path, which means that The information that was given by Mr. Schwartz was incorrect. He said there was never a path. There has been a path. We have people here that were there since the street was developed. And to that point, I understand, they bought their land, and they were told that people don't go through there, but the people at 130 have lived there for 5 years. And it is virtually impossible that they have not seen people go in and out. The people that go in and out are kids that go in the morning and in the afternoon. There's no teenagers drinking, there's no people going there in the middle of the night. They're kids.
Are you watching
We all want.
24/7?
Excuse me?
Are you watching 24/7?
No, I'm not watching 24/7, but I live on that street.
We're going to adhere to our process, okay? So it's
Well,
going to be
she
one.
asked me a
I
question.
understand,
Okay.
but we really need to keep this one person at a time. And
Sure.
I will recognize you, and I'll ask you, Mr. Casarino, not to repeat points that have been made earlier this evening. Please
Well, I
continue.
was merely going to say that when Mr. Schwartz was reading the constitutional rights about eminent domain, which again, we would get any resolution that doesn't involve eminent domain. We were told that the only way to have access is the way it's been for 63 years. That wouldn't be our way to do it. That would be the only way. But Mr. Schwartz pointed out that the bar has to be raised and it has to be a legitimate reason and a serious reason. I'm sorry, but the safety of people, to me, is as high as the bar goes. So I think that whoever wrote that had in mind safety of people. That's all.
Yes, sir.
My name is Tom Philbin. I live at 107 Birch Tree. We've lived there for 18 years. I've been retired for 4 years. I'm home during the daytime. In 18 years, I've maybe seen 6 to 8 young people cross there. Certainly no one crosses in the winter, like last winter with 10 feet of snow.
Thank you, sir.
May I just respond since Mr. Casarino?
Yes.
So
Briefly, please don't repeat.
I just want to make it clear, I never said this
points
was never a pathway. I said this was never a road. There's a big distinction between never a pathway and never a road. I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. I see a hand in the back. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Elizabeth Phillips, and I live at 82 Birch Street Drive, and I just want to clarify the date that the land was purchased. It's not,
So, and to address what this gentleman said too, the land was purchased, was privately purchased first in 1990, and it was always owned in combination with the owner of the parcel that the Lawler's current house is on. So that also brings the issue of merger and possible zoning issues. If the one parcel is taken by eminent domain, it's going to create an even more non-conforming, this is already a non-conforming lot. And if this parcel is taken, it's going to create a greater non-conformity, which could potentially have even more impact on the Lawler's rights and setback issues and sideline issues and all these kinds of things that may occur as a result of that.
Ma'am, was your question when Mr.
yeah, and
Lawler
I'll just
purchased
confirm,
it?
like, I've lived on the street for 19 years, and I've raised 3 children, who, you know, all the owners since I think we bought in 1996, if we ever wanted to use that path, we always asked the owners, because it was always under my impression that it was private property.
So I think the question is when Mr. Lawler and his wife purchased the property.
They purchased it in July of 2015.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, Mary Crosha again. I did speak with the owners, the prior owners of the Lawlers, and I know that they spoke with the prior owners to the Chapins. And neither of these families wanted people coming through. And they would tell people, please, do not cut through our yard. As a matter of fact, another neighbor went and asked Mrs. Chapins if he could walk his daughter through there, and she said no, because I don't want everybody coming through. And they did, I believe that they did put that in writing, they couldn't be here tonight with that for the record. And prior to that, it was owned by a developer, Ira Marlowe, who didn't live there, so he couldn't monitor and say to somebody, you know what, I don't want you coming through here. But once it was purchased, it was very clear that they didn't want it.
I'm just going to have to confirm that, because the 2 owners prior to the Shapists, we were friendly with, so they would allow us to walk through the neighborhood with our children, because they had children the same age. But the 3rd owner prior to you, she did not want anyone walking through there, and she asked us not to do that. And my daughter was a young, she was a young girl, 10, 12 years old, and had a friend at the end of Dover Terrace on Dover Road.
Thank Yes, ma'am.
I'm Brianne Lamb, and I live at 57 Birch Tree Drive. And we bought about a year and a half ago. And one of the things we liked most about the street was the fact that it was one access in and out. It made us feel safe. We have 2 children, and we thought growing up there, having them grow up there was a wonderful opportunity. And I think opening up the pathway to any other residents that's not on our street poses a safety risk to us and our children and our families. So,
Thank you. All right, I think, anything else from FinCom?
Just ask one question. The selectmen here, I'm not sure if the DPW here, I think safety things here. Has anyone done a study of the relative safety across Westwood in a lot of different places? To see, you know, I'm sure there are other spots that are safety concerns. Has anything been done to rank that or say these are priorities of the town for safety?
Well, I would say just quite honestly, the DPW is kind of addressing now, we have the complete streets that we're working on, but they only come to us really as residents bring to our attention.
I will actually just comment, as part of the Complete Streets policy that was just adopted through town meeting, the step in the process before you actually apply for funding is to develop a prioritization plan, which was, we just received funding from the state to do so. So we'll be working heavily with the Fed by committee, developing this plan as far as priorities. For example, High Street is going to be a priority section between Pond and Millbrook, which is a town meeting article design. We could most certainly put this on the prioritization plan, but I think what everybody has to be aware of as well is that there's a lot of locations in town like this, and we have gaps in sidewalk infrastructure along Manhattan Street. We have gaps in sidewalk infrastructure along Tree Street, so not sure where this would fall with regards and respect to that prioritization plan, but yes, to answer your question, we'll have the priority plan developed very shortly.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, Mike?
It's my custom. Yes, sir. 40-something years you've been the town's attorney. Congratulations. In those 40, distinguished 40-plus years, has there ever been a taking of private property by eminent domain in this town?
Yes.
Okay. Similar situation, or how does that situation?
There was a lot of land up on East Street that was subject to flooding. Developer wanted to develop it. I'm not sure if it was a petition article by the political neighborhood or not, but we did take that. Over the years, we have taken property, we call it friendly eminent domain, just to clear up titles. The Conservation Commission, numerous relatives. I don't think we've got, I think in my time, we've had one taking, which was not right. All of the others were. There were takings when the new high school was being built. They were friendly takings. But I've never seen this.
Thank you.
Anything else from FinCom? I think this will conclude the discussion on this issue. I want to thank everyone who participated. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Kathleen. And before we came and we looked at the lot, we actually have plans for that land. So this path that they're talking about, the backyard, we walked it to see if we could use it for what we want to as private owners of the land. So it's just astounding to me. I walked it with conservation. We had the land surveyed. The fence was put up for our private property, not for anything else, but we have plans. We applied for a pool permit. This is private property that we have our own plans. I know that affects the town in different ways, but I just can't imagine that people can start to dictate what is going to happen on your own land when you buy it outright with a clean deed, a clean title, and you go through and you think that your government and everything else is going to protect you. So that's all I have to say. So, yes, sorry.
I'm just hearing all kinds of things tonight, which seem to be opposite from what I've been hearing before, that this was used regularly by the neighbors on it. Dover Terrace over a period of time. It's very clear, looking at the plans from 1952, that that was established as a right-of-way. And the right-of-way is established in a subdivision. It remains as such until it's legally extinguished. There's no indication that it's ever done. When it is extinguished, all the people who are part of that right-of-way have rights to do that and have to sign off on that. The right-of-way stays with the land. Just buying a piece of land and saying, you know, I want to buy this piece of land, doesn't make that right-of-way go away. And you can see on all those charts that that right-of-way is established. Now, I've heard crazy things like, well, it's only a plan. Well, no, this is a plan that was signed off by the planning board at the time. The records are not as good as they are now, but the planning board said, sign on that plan that showed a right-of-way. So that right-of-way exists, it still exists. It's not owned by the town, it's a subdivision, so it's owned by the development. And it can stay owned by the development until such time as the town takes it over for, you know, accepted as part of the development. So it's still a right-of-way, and they, and the fact that it's two pieces of property, it's not one, it's two. Even though they buy them together at the same time, it still doesn't mean that that piece of property becomes part of their lot. Anytime you buy a property, it has an easement, you have to honor that easement. So, a right-of-way is an easement.
Okay. I do want to move on. I see some other hands, please.
Can I just say one more thing?
No, actually, sir, I want to get the hands that I saw raised. I saw, Nora, did you want to speak, Nora?
I've already spoken, so whatever you want. Sure. I just want to make it clear that there are many subdivisions that have been approved over the years. In many cases, there are multiple subdivisions involved in the same property. Every subdivision isn't effectuated. So there might be a subdivision plan brought before the planning board in the 1940s, a different one brought in the 1960s, another one just brought in the last couple of years for the same parcel. Every plan builds upon the other and erases the one before it. What you need to do to create a right-of-way is have that right-of-way accepted by the selectmen, following authority to accept it by town meeting. There were acceptance articles for Dover Terrace and for Birch Tree Drive. Neither of those acceptance articles that went to town meeting included this strip of land. The strip of land was always owned privately, separate from those roadways. The roadways were shown on the plan. There's no doubt at one point that a developer thought that they might connect those two roads, but they never did. And when they brought it to town meeting, I believe it was in the late 1940s, they brought Dover Terrace in, and then in the early 1950s, they came in with Birch Street, two separate owners. Neither article that went to town meeting for acceptance of the roadway, creating the rights of way, included this strip. So showing it on a plan doesn't create property rights. It shows an intention, as was said before.
Nora, would you just identify yourself?
Yes, I'm sorry, Nora Loughlin, Director of Community Network.
If I could just follow up. The developer of Dover Terrace was a fellow named Ira Bauer. Unfortunately, I've been around long enough to have known him. And one of his modus operandi was to keep a piece of land in a subdivision that would lead into what could be potentially a further subdivision. And there are a number of places that have eventually developed the back. In this particular case, he kept this parcel. It was a lot. He owned it. He didn't pay taxes on it. Eventually, the town took it to pay taxes. Ira redeemed his rights to the parcel by paying to the town the back taxes, and then sold it as a separate lot to the property owner these folks lived in. So it was a separate parcel to begin with. He held on to it because he thought he might be able to use it, but then he found out he couldn't. So it's always been private property.
Thank you.
Yeah, that'd be
We
fine.
do, excuse me, we do need to wrap up this discussion. Actually, Cindy, you have a question?
Well, so my question is, if you, I guess for Nora, if you create a subdivision and you have a number of lots, and then you have a parcel that's supposed to be a road or a pathway, if you then want to sell it, have you created it as a sellable lot? Like, what is the process when a subdivision is created to make these lots sellable?
So when you first go to planning board and get your subdivision approved, before you can actually build on any of the lots, you need to have a covenant in place to allow you to build on a lot before the roadway is complete, or you complete the roadway. In this case, the planning board allowed the developer to complete the roadway and build on the lots. I don't have records from the late 40s and early 50s that show exactly what the process was and how they went about that, but the law that governs it has not changed significantly since then. Once the planning board signs off on a roadway, the lots can use that roadway for frontage. There is no lot that needs this strip for frontage, so the lots on either side, 120 and 130, have their frontage on Birch Tree Drive. They could have been allowed to exist with or without this connection. So I think the connection is important to a developer who wanted to connect the two roads, but it must have been important to the planning board. And at some point, the planning board allowed the roadway to go to town meeting for acceptance without this parcel on it. So I don't have minutes of a meeting that shows the board discussing that and saying how it came about. But I can tell you that every lot on Birch Street and every lot on Dover Terrace has frontage on those streets, not on this connecting path.
That's fine. I just want to say that in recognition of what Mrs. Lawler said about buying it, about liking the lot, about the whole thing, I would like to say that my wife was an acquaintance with Mrs. Lawler before she purchased the lot. My wife went to her several times, I did as well, a couple times, and said to her, "This is great, you're moving into the neighborhood, fantastic. They have 4 children, we have 4 children." I'm amazed that them knowing, and she actually had a meeting with her and said, "This is the way the kids get to school. This is the way the kids get back." The meeting that I was a parent at, what Mrs. Lawler said was, "We'll work it out."
I said I was putting in a pool,
You did, but you said you'd
and
work
that's
it out.
where it's
You
going.
know what, we
Harry.
need, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, this
I'm sorry,
is
folks.
awful.
You said you'd work it out.
Excuse me,
Now-
excuse
now-
me.
now-
Oh my gosh.
Well, she interrupted me, I didn't interrupt.
All right, I need to, and we need to conclude this. I think that there's no
think we have all.
end. I think we have all we need, and I think.
Well,
we need to
I
move
just
on.
personally wanted, she said dictate. I did not, I can stand up. I did not try, I was forced into coming here and presenting this. We don't want to do this. We came to the town for safety. Everybody here who has children, even if you don't have children, it's undisputable safety hazard right now.
Thank you, sir. I think we have that. Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who participated. We are going to move on now to the Historic Commission article. Mr. Parabolos is here. Welcome.
I'm surprised that it didn't come
Sure. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Peter Parabolos. I'm with the Education Town. I chair the Western Historical Commission. There are a couple of committee members here tonight, I just wanted to recognize them. raise your hands. Marilyn Friedman, Mariel Shenko, Kristen Noon, Laura Provo. Oh, Mariel I'm here to talk about the demolition, the start construction bylaw tonight. I guess the purpose of the bylaw is the same as the last time we were here, which was a year ago. We go to town meeting the last time. We lost by 5 votes, majority. So we're bringing it back again this year. I'll briefly go over what it's all about with the handout. So the purpose of the bylaw is to maintain the character of the town of Westwood, putting in place a demolition permit process that raises awareness of our town's historic properties threatened by demolition, promoting alternatives to demolition and imposing a 6-month waiting period for the issuance of a demo permit if the property is found to be historic, and this bylaw does not prevent demolition. So if there is a 6-month waiting period imposed, after the 6-month period, the structure of the property can still be demolished. Not stop demolition. It is similar to last year's bylaw in many respects, but we have made some changes and updates. In particular, due to specific FinCom comments from last year, we addressed all the comments that were in the town warrant that I will go through quickly. Comments made at town meeting we've also addressed, and also residents that have come to us after town meeting with comments and questions that we've answered in both the town and the bylaw. So there is a small packet in front of you, which shows the state of Massachusetts on front of it. So what I'm going to do is kind of go through this, kind of guide us through. So the Massachusetts map we have in front of you shows communities that currently have historic demolition bylaw in place. In last year's warrant, I believe the number was 100. There's now over 140 communities that have it since last year's. You can see that you can see where Westwood is in the scheme of things. The majority of these bylaws are on the eastern edge of Massachusetts, but there are some out in the west. Westwood has about 5,100 homes or properties in it, according to the assessor's map. Of those properties, pre-1911, which is what the bylaw would cover, there are approximately 212 properties, which would be about 4% of the total homes in Westwood. On the back of that sheet with the state, you can see the actual cities and towns that are listed and their waiting period for the bylaw. So the average waiting period for Massachusetts is 8 months for the bylaw of the cities and towns that have it in place. We're proposing 6 months, which is much less than the average. If you go to the next sheet, front and back, you can see the actual properties that fall under this bylaw. We listed the properties, the years they were built, and what we would consider to be historic. Just because they are on this list does not make them historic. This just means that they fall under this bylaw and they will be reviewed by the bylaw. There are instances where homes that have now been demolished, that were on this list, were deemed historic, but upon review, were found not to be historic. So just because they're on this list does not mean that they're historic. That is the purpose of actually having the meetings and going through the bylaw process to see if we impose a waiting period. So just because they're on this list does not make them historic. It just means they are pre-1911 structures in town that would follow this bylaw in our review process. If you go to the next sheet, is the actual process. So I'll kind of quickly go through it. So basically, it's a flow chart, and if you want to file for a demolition permit, you go to the building inspector, he'll take out his list, we'll look at the list, and we'll see if the property is there, if the house is built before January 1st, 1911. If it is not, then he will issue the demolition permit within 5 days or 10 days or whatever Joe does right now. I don't believe it's more than 2 weeks. If it is on the list, within 7 days he will notify this commission, Western Historical Commission. Within 20 days of receiving that, we will hold a public hearing where we will talk to the homeowner, whoever else comes to this meeting, to talk about the property. Within 10 days of that, we will close the public hearing and issue a decision within 5 days. So two things can happen. We can find that the structure is historic and preferably preserved, and we would impose the 6-month delay. Or we would say it is not historically significant, and we would then issue the demolition permit. So one of the big differences between last year and this year that the FinCom had was they stated that, and in fact they are correct, and I'll read to you the exact words. While the official demolition delay, we're not calling it a delay this year, we're calling it a change. We took the word delay out to make it more user-friendly, so we're calling it the historic structure demolition bylaw as opposed to the demolition delay bylaw. I hope that people won't want to vote for delay, so we kind of take the word delay out. But it's essentially the same thing. So the Finance Committee states, while the official demolition delay would be for 6 months, procedures including notifications, hearings, announcements add up to a maximum additional period of over 150 days from the time of demolition permit application is submitted, bringing the potential delay up to 100 to 11 months. Meaning, once we issue our decision, then we impose the 6-month delay. What we're doing this time is the 6-month delay, if it is going to be issued, the clock will start ticking of the day the application is actually filed. Which means that if we go through the maximum days there, we're really looking at about a 4.5-month delay. That was the first thing. So if we do say that it is a historic structure and we do impose the delay, we work with the homeowner to see if we can somehow rework the property, have it included somehow, so that it doesn't get demolished. If all else fails, we ask that we link the structure and just take photographs and document the structure. This is something that would be free of charge to the homeowner. This is something I would personally do. And then after that, the structure can be demolished. And that's pretty much the short of it. So if you look at that last box there, it says demolition permit may be issued before 6 months if the following: the structure has been fully documented and salvageable artifacts have been removed. So if we can go in and there's absolutely no interest in saving the structure, we will ask that we can have the salvage company come in. Again, no cost to the homeowner. It's a simple listing on the Massachusetts Historical Commission listserv. A salvage company comes in, takes out the staircase, does whatever's historic will come out of the house. If it's done in a couple of weeks, then the permit is issued. This bylaw is not intended to be a hardship. All it is intended for us to, one, raise awareness by notifying all the abutters to the property. Right now, if you want to demolish a house, you do it quietly. The house is demolished over a weekend. This bylaw would trigger notifications to abutters within 300 yards of the property. They would know that there's a house being demolished, and they could maybe step in. Maybe they like the house. Maybe they want to move the house. So this is all just to sort of raise awareness. In the end, if the house is going to be demolished, at least we can get a record of what used to be there. If you go to the page, the same page, if you flip that over, we put together some frequently asked questions. This package will be available at the town meeting. We'll send this out. And I'll quickly just go through each one. We thought that some people might be like, what is a demolition permit? What's the point of that? So we define what a demolition permit is and the purpose. Of course, the purpose of the bylaw. Does the bylaw affect my house? Well, of course, only if it's before January 1st, 1911. Does the bylaw stop demolition in town? No, it does not. Does the bylaw prevent new development? No, it does not. If the house is found to be historic, how long is the waiting period? Up to 6 months. What if I want to change the color of my house, or replace my windows or doors, or redo my roof, or redo my kitchen? Will the bylaw affect me? Absolutely not. What if I want to demolish interior features of my house? Will the bylaw affect me? No. If the structure is found to be historic and is demolished before the waiting period of 6 months, then no building permit will be issued for 2 years. What if my house is destroyed by fire or natural causes? Does this affect me? It does not. I plan on selling my house in 6 months. So it's winter time, I'm going to sell the house over the summer and the spring. Can I file for a demolition permit now and give it to the new owner of my house after I sell? Yes. A demolition permit is good for 2 years and is transferable to the new owner. These are some of the questions. The last sheet is a letter we sent out to historic property owners in town. We held a public hearing early on this week. I know the Finance Commission also, one of the issues they had Specific issues regarding the article, they said that they believe that owners may not be generally aware of the proposed bylaw, and while there is a plan for an education program to be undertaken, it is to take place after the warrant hearings. So this year, we did it before the warrant hearings. The letter is here, it was sent out February 9th. The hearings were held earlier this week. That's all I have. Hope there are any questions, comments.
Thank you, Mr. Bravo. Questions from FinCom? Yeah, Barb.
Kaz, how many people came to your meeting and what was the feedback you got from people?
It was all, we had about 10 people show up. We had 15 or so people show up last year. Not the same people showed up, so maybe we got 25 people out of 212 property owners. It was all positive. I did receive a lot of emails of helpful hints, some of the things we might want to do, like demolition by neglect, and some other things that we're not going to do. There was interest in plaque programs. People were not aware that their house were historic and wanted to know where they can get a plaque made to put on their house. They were interested in the history of the house, and I directed them to the Mass Historical Commission website, and they had a printout of their house and what was historic about it and why. So it's been all positive so far.
So you had no negative feedback from anybody on this list?
No.
And there's still no tools that you really have beyond assisting, there's no financial backing from the historical commission. Do you have people interested? Have you worked successfully with anybody, restorers or something?
I personally have in other towns. We've had structures removed. That typically happens. I know there was a house recently in Westwood that wasn't dismantled. That was the house in the corner of and Clapham Street. That was one of the oldest houses in town, so that's obviously. But I have worked with salvage companies, so the Massachusetts Historical Commission has a listserv, which I have a member of, which we go on and we say there's a free house at 190 High Street in Westwood. Please contact myself. The person will get in contact with me. I would get in contact with the owners. The house will get moved. There's no cost to the homeowner. In fact, there's maybe a $50,000 to $60,000 savings in demo and hazardous waste disposal if the house is old, so there's probably asbestos or pipes, whatever. So in the end, it's a savings for the homeowner. Because the house is actually moved and what's left is just a foundation.
So for the most part, and historically, how has this worked in other towns? I mean, I'm aware of an attempt in Weston on a house that they weren't ultimately able to save. Is it usually salvage or move?
No.
Have there been purchases and?
They're usually demolished.
Okay. So it's really just delaying.
Yeah, delaying in hopes of at least trying to save it, if not, just at least document. Right now, we don't even have a chance to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate the fact that you've tightened up all the time. Because I'm concerned about people that might be in financial hardship time, and that doesn't factor into your list though.
Yeah, it doesn't, but, I mean, publicly and on the record, I will say that if there's a hardship involved, this isn't meant to be a hardship. We're not gonna make this hard on people. If somebody's having an issue where they absolutely have to sell the house, there's no reason why we can't say, listen, go ahead, go on in and document the house, but we really gotta do this, and here are the reasons why. Personally, I can't see giving somebody a hard time about that. It's just me personally.
Peter, is there a way to carve out an exception in the article for
Well, what I don't want to do is put the word hardship in there and then have other people looking for definitions of hardship, what is hardship, just as like we could be putting in other language that people can. I don't want this to get into a legal battle. If somebody wants to tear down the house that bad, we're not going to go to court over it. We're simply not. That's not what this is about. So that's why we're not. This is so soft compared to what Massachusetts Historical Commission is asking.
Except that you do have in here that if the structure is demolished before the waiting period expires, no building permit will be issued for 2 years.
You are correct.
So that is a.
So what would have to happen, I mean, if this is malicious and they do not, if they tell us this is a hard, if they ignore us absolutely and don't want to deal with us, don't want to deal with the process, that's what happens. If they come to us and tell us, listen, we need to demolish the house, these are the reasons, we write a letter and they're excused, and the building inspector would have to go ahead and issue it. This is not meant to be a hardship, this is just meant, you look at all the communities that have it, this is just meant to try and save the character of the buildings we have around us. It's one thing to touch something, it's another thing to just look at a picture or something, that's all I'm trying to say.
On the hardship issue, I appreciate your intent, but my concern would be, as I expressed to you at your meeting, that there is nothing in there that the next person who comes in as a historic commission member has to abide by. So although I'm certainly very impressed by the entire group that I witnessed the other night, my concern would be not having this hard down here, so that if somebody does run into a hardship, and the next group doesn't have the same intent as you to make this not a challengeable, difficult thing, that there'd be nothing to force that, and they're still in this delay.
So, Marjorie, you're suggesting we put something in there that talks about a hardship?
I'm suggesting there be a hardship exception, yes. And I had a couple of other questions.
Sure.
You said that the list is not a complete list because you think that those are the ones, but you wouldn't know until the time comes, is that right?
No, this is the complete list. What I was saying was that if it is on this list, it doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a delay. We're not going to, just because it's on here, we're not going to say it's historic.
That's what I mean. That
Yeah.
we're saying the same thing. So
Oh, okay, yeah.
So my question is, during that time period from when they file for the delay,
Yes.
and you go through the next 4 steps on the list before you decide it's historic, how are you making that decision?
We're making a decision on what's left of the structure. So the structure, I'll start with that. The structure I personally went into that was on this list, that I was required to go and look at, was completely gutted on the inside. There were additions and stuff put on the house, windows removed. Architecturally, there was plenty of examples in surrounding communities. It wasn't distinctive in any way. There was a historic business in the establishment back in the 1800s. There's no evidence of that in there. I personally, that's how I made the determination it was not historic.
So are you actually going in to make those determinations during those first 30, I think it's 37 days I
You
have.
have to, yes. That's part of it.
And I wanted to know too, on the non-residential that were listed on Washington Street, are those the structures that are currently being looked at for redevelopment?
I'm not sure. Nora might know the answer to that.
I think the Blue Heart Tavern is listed on yours.
Right.
This is the historic structure, that's one of them. I think Cafe Diva building was probably built prior to 1910, that's probably also on that list. Any buildings built before the end of 1910.
Because I noticed several over on Washington. So do we know whether or not it's going to affect anything we're trying to do over there?
It would not, because that application was filed in advance of if this is part of the town, which is accurate. But even with that in mind, that project on Washington Street has the intention to save the Blue Heart Tavern.
Okay.
The planning board has been told that that should be a condition of the decision that building get moved, not demolished. So, and the rest of the other buildings are not before the court this time.
So there were 2 other scenarios I was seeing it when I was reading it that I wondered about. And one was, what if and I hope I can say this clearly, what if the person owns a historic structure, but they don't know whether or not the buyer is going to want to demolish or whether they're going to want to restore, and they just want to put it out on the market. Even though the demolition permit would be transferable, is there a way to draft into this that you all would delay pulling stuff out in case the buyer ends up not to be a demolisher? Does that make sense? So in other words,
Well, the person doesn't, so you're saying that the person, we wouldn't want to tear it down. I mean, the person is looking in the future, right? I mean, they're not selling the house. They're thinking about selling the house, and they want to make it as easy as possible for the buyer to determine whether they want to tear the house down or do something to it. So they just have to wait 6 months and just give them the permit, they have it, and the buyer can do whatever they want.
but given it says that you all want to take pieces out of it, like the stairwell that you talked about,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
is there a way to delay taking out that stairwell in case it ends up that that's not something that they end up wanting to?
That would have to be in the agreement that we fashion. the language for that. We need.
Does this call for an agreement, the bylaws?
I mean, in here, it says that the owner can do that stuff, but there's nothing specific that says that an agreement can be made. I mean, in here, it talks about us working with the homeowner, but there's nothing specific to what exactly we're going to be working. I mean, I'm sure there's tons of scenarios that try to put something in here that specifically states. I suppose we could talk and try to come up with something. That would be helpful.
Okay, and the other thing I was wondering is whether or not it's possible for somebody who's considering putting their property on the market to come to you all ahead of time before they file for any permit, and say, hey, can you just come in and document all this for me, determine what your determination is going to be, so that I'm not into a 6-month delay, I know ahead of time what I'm looking at.
I don't see why not.
Could we get something like that into it?
That somebody can go ahead of time, it's just for an opinion.
Well, for an opinion that would actually be binding, really.
Anything else, Margaret?
I think that covers it. Thanks.
Any other questions for FinCom? Yeah.
Just for clarity, the coming in and documenting and coming in and taking out of the inventory, is that mandated or is that voluntary by the current owner?
Only within the 6-month period. So if they want to demolish it before 6 months, let's say they want to wait 6 months. And they say, look, do we have to wait for 6 months? And listen, we tried, no one is interested in the house, can we demolish it ahead of that? Then we can say to them, all right, well, let's think about it. Have we tried for, how many weeks have we tried? Is there no interest in it? If we can come in and just remove historic artifacts that are part of the house, historic aspects of the house, if we can do that, and then there was something else. If we felt that it was, exact language, so that last box. Structure has been fully documented and all salvageable artifacts removed, and if the Westwood Historical Commission is satisfied, no reasonable likelihood anyone's interested in saving the structure, they can be given the permit before 6 months. Okay.
But they could just wait 6 months.
And take it all down.
You're not forced.
No.
They don't have to allow you in the house to take pictures,
No.
take out the staircase.
No, they don't have to allow us into the house.
They just have to wait the 6 months and then they.
Then they take it right down. Yeah. Even if you want to document the house, they don't want us to continue.
Any other questions from FinCom members? Questions or comments from members of the public? Yes, ma'am. Please identify yourself by your name and where you live.
Sure. Marianne Wishenko, Dover Road, 226 Dover Road. So I'm actually representing myself and my husband and my neighbors on Dover Road, Rose Street, Summer Street. My friends in town, I've been here for 38 years. I've been on Dover Road for 33 years. And we're one of the property owners of the little, we call it a scenic road. I think the town does recognize it as a scenic road. And all of us in our neighborhood really have made a lovely effort to maintain the pretty road and the pretty homes that Charlie Howard built homes that were built in the 1930s. And we have this great respect for the historic properties on our road. And I just wanted you to know that in voting positively for this, that you can be assured that you have the efforts and the support for this bylaw from residents of historic homes. The other thing I think to consider is the preciousness of the historic homes and those throughout our community all these years who have maintained these homes. And people drive past, even though Dover Road turned into a busy road. Wherever I walk around, people often comment, oh, that's one of my favorite roads in Westwood. So we want the FinCom to understand, we don't want to lose what we've established. And with this bylaw, we really have an opportunity for neighborhood awareness. If I hear, it wouldn't happen on Dover Road, but that there's going to be a historic home sold, I might be interested. I might have friends who might be interested in purchasing that home because they love the network of our community. And we don't want to, I think, get too complicated. I'm also, did I address myself? I'm also on the Historic Commission and the Westwood Historical Society as well. So I think what we want to look for here within the approval with the FinCom is the recognition of the preciousness of the character of our community and those of us who have supported this for our lifetimes. And I think if you drive past the homes in our area, they're very beautifully maintained. And it gives a unique, not to be found anyplace else, a very special opportunity for Westwood to recognize. So I think what we're trying to outline here in the proposal is really to keep it simple. We have this list of 140 other communities in Massachusetts who have been able to be affected. And I think with this bylaw, we actually can have an open meeting and we can have an awareness. And I'd like to be aware if somebody wants to tear down a historic home in Westwood. And that's basically what we're doing. And I think it's a friendly gesture, and it's not intended to be an antagonistic gesture, but it's a gesture of cooperation within the community. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Mary Ellen LaRose. I live on High Street. I'm also a member of the Historic Commission. This map, I feel like, tells it all. I feel like Westwood, it's long overdue that we have put a bylaw into place. By having a bylaw in place, it shows we want to preserve the character of our town. I mean, you just drive down High Street and you see the historic homes. That's kind of what makes Westwood. And by not having a bylaw in place, we're saying to developers or saying to other towns that we don't care about our historic structures. I want to be clear, and Peter talked about this, that the bylaw doesn't prevent demolition. It's not even 6 months. I mean, from the beginning to the end, it could be 2 weeks that this is, going on. Maybe there is a hardship, and we meet and we talk about it, and the folks need to get out of that house as quick as they can. It's not going to prevent them from selling a house. It's going to be less. It could be less than 6 months. So I just want to make it clear, it doesn't prevent people from changing the color of their house or redoing the entire inside of their house. All it is preserving it. It's giving, it's a 6-month delay, possibly, at the very most. So I think it really sends a strong message, and the fact that Westwood is not on this map already is an embarrassment to our town, because it shows that we don't care about the history and the historic homes of our town. So I ask you to carefully consider this packet. I feel like especially these frequently asked questions that Peter put together really gives you an understanding of what it is, and that it's not something that is intended to stop development, to stop folks from doing what they want with the property that they own.
I saw this gentleman first.
Sure.
And then you-
Edward Musto, 36 Blue Hill Drive. I think if someone wants to take their home and voluntarily put it on this historical home list, I think that's wonderful. But, you shouldn't be forced to subscribe to this, okay? It's property rights. What's the significance between after December 31st, 1910 and December 31st, 1910? It's 1 day. And how are you going to say to someone, because your house was built before December 31st, 1910, you have to wait 6 months before you can sell it, but you can't demolish it. I think, it's not an area where we should be, okay? I mean, if somebody wants to voluntarily put the house out there, this is, put it in a deed, put a restriction on the deed, that's one thing. But just force people to subscribe to this mandatory delay, to demolition construction delay, I don't think is fair to property owners. And, you've been in town 40, 50 years, okay? You're getting on your years, and you have an opportunity to sell something, and you find, oh my God, my house was built before December 31st, 1910. I can sell it, but you can't tear it down for 6 months. There might be an opportunity that someone's going to miss, okay? So Again, if somebody wants to put their house on the list, and, you know, voluntarily, and put a deed restriction that says, you know, they're willing to subscribe to this, that's fine. But I don't think we should be going in that direction with this voluntary demolition. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Musto, you're a developer, correct? In town?
I guess you could say that, sure.
Okay, so typically how
I'm
long?
a resident, I'm a property owner in town, sure. Yeah.
So how long does it typically take you in a construction project if you were to come onto a property and take down a house and get one built?
Well, I think if you did your homework, you get all your terminations of services, you could probably do that in less than 30 days.
Really?
Yeah,
30 days?
less than 30 days.
So let's talk about the property that you have up by, on High Street, the house, the historic home that you moved.
That I moved.
Correct.
Voluntarily.
That you
I
saved.
moved.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. So you were able to work around that house and sort of leave it there and go ahead with your
I
development.
was, yes. But that's me. I mean, not everyone's in the same category, but that was me, sure.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear, thanks.
Yeah.
Ma'am, put your hand up.
My name is Christina Abbott. I'm at 320. Sorry, I get emotional about it. I'm at 323 High Street. I own the Jeremiah Colburn House, 1830. I'm very proud of the house, and I've spent a lot of time maintaining it and making it look as if it belongs in the town. Any changes that I've made have been historic in their nature, bettering the house, making it more suitable for the period in which it was built and the style of our town. I value the historical nature of our town. I think it's a little short-sighted if we don't think of that. We're living in the present now, but those looking back 100 years from now at our town, how are they going to see it? I certainly don't want to see more development in town where it comes to historic homes, and we've lost a lot of those already. And I think it's a little greedy to just be thinking of what we're going to build in place. The house that went down at the corner of Dover Road, I was so heartbroken to see that go down. It may not have been a fine example of the historic structures, but it certainly was a house that had some value. And I asked the developer there, the man who was on the site, if any measures had been taken to salvage anything from the house, or could anybody go in and take a look at it? Was there something of value that, had anybody been notified that there was something that they could look at? And he said, no, my job is just to get the house down as fast as I can and put up another one as fast as I can. That was the answer. Apparently somebody from the Historical Commission had gone in and taken pictures, but I wasn't allowed to go in. He said it's a liability. We can't let anybody in, not even people who are interested in buying things. It's it's a liability issue, and we're not going to allow it. So I was really, really sad, and I walked by that house many times, thinking about the people who had lived there and what had happened to the house and how they weren't able to keep it up as well as they might have wanted to. And I take the responsibility of doing that for my own house, at least so that it looks good from the outside, and on the inside it's even better. It's more historical looking. We've maintained and rebuilt a beehive oven. We've kept the molding pretty much the same and made it suitable for the time as we did updates. Rob Lawrence was working with me on it for when we did a renovation. We added, we took an old broken down porch and made it into a beautiful room. So now it's a usable room. We added on to the kitchen and to the bathroom, and those rooms are now, we've expanded the use of the house and made it really beautiful and special. People come in and they say, this is such a beautiful place. And if I hadn't taken that responsibility and had that love of the historic structures and had the love of maintaining history. My grandfather was a sculptor, and he was teaching at the museum school for 50 years. And I look back at the work that he did and think, all right, that was back at the turn of the century, and my house was before that. So I just want to put my vote in for maintaining the historic nature of our houses and our town for the future. Things that we don't appreciate now will be appreciated in the future.
Thank you. Yes. Sir.
Steve Schwartz, 615 High Street. Just a question for you. In the process, you mentioned a public hearing, and I'm not sure I heard it correctly, with the butters and whatnot. What is the purpose of, is there a public hearing in there? What role? Or
The abutters are just notified that the house next door to them is going to be demolished. They can or cannot. It's up to them if you want to come to the public hearing. The public hearing is mostly for the homeowner, abutters, if they'd like to come, just so we can all get together and discuss our thoughts and how we can move forward. That's basically it.
in a public hearing, and abutters or otherwise, they have no authority or rights in terms of the process?
Correct.
It's your group, basically?
Pretty much, yeah. Yep.
Any other questions or comments on this? Yes, sir.
Brian Hawks, Sexton Ave. Why 1910 is the cutoff point? I ask that because mainly for preservation of historic structures, you're trying to preserve the architectural integrity of the building, something we just don't find. But yet we still see that in the 1910s, 1920s, right after you have a 1930 bump of okay. I'm just wondering why the cutoff point 1910.
We decided on that, I think, because there's a lot of properties that were built during that time period. We could have gone, Massachusetts Historical Commission suggests 100 years. So it's 2012 now, it would be 100 years. I'm sorry. No, it's 16 now, sorry. It's late. So it would be 1916. And then every year, that date would change. It would go 1917, 1918. But we felt that 1910 was the right year for this town. And each town is different.
Any other, Mr. Walsh?
Michael Walsh, 47 Phillips Brooks Road. I was just wondering, is there a way that houses can come off permanently? It doesn't seem that there seems to be a provision in there. In other words, if I owned an historical house, which I don't for the record, but if I did, and I let you in to look at the house and we determine there's nothing there, does the house then come off permanently so that the historical commission is not duplicating things once it's been decided?
I personally don't see a problem with that. We would come in and say, you know what, there's nothing here. I don't see and you get a letter from us stating that, and I can't see how anyone in the future would preclude a motion.
Only because you said the permit was good for 2 years, and I'm thinking what could possibly change within 2 years if you were able to access the house.
Right. No, I don't see a reason why we couldn't do that. But, I mean, that, me personally, I mean, I've talked to the commission, but we're all pretty reasonable.
Yeah, my name's Beth Tavija, and I live at 5 White Lane. My house was built in 1700, and I just wanted to say that I didn't really know about the bylaw last year, but I am up to speed this year. So I did go to the meeting earlier in the week, and I am in support of putting this in. I'll see where it's really a hardship at all. And I think it should be, and I was actually surprised that it was just Westwood, Dedham, and Norwood that didn't have it in the whole surrounding area.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of the public? I see any more from FinCom on this?
Just kind of along the same lines that Marjorie was saying about trying to make a firm provision for hardship. The same issue on taking houses off the list, if you could make a firm provision for that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for your time and your ideas and input. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. And with that, we welcome Chairman Walsh.
I don't have any slides tonight. I'm happy to go up there. But I don't know if you want
It might be easier, I think folks would be able to see it better if you're up there if you don't mind. I would just say the planning board, I think we're probably not likely to make it this evening, so, yeah. As I said before, this hearing is continuing until tomorrow night, and we're not going to have a late night here. We're going to be here 2 nights in a row, so feel free to leave should you wish to do so. Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Finance and Warrant Commission. As you know, there are, I think there's 11 articles in the back of the book which we addressed in the March 28th meeting. We are still working on the budget, so we will skip those. The first one we talk about is street acceptance. Right now, there are at least one, possibly 2 roads that will be accepted. The first is Blue Hill Drive from Leah to Whitewood Road, which is complete. It's been been done by Mass Highway, and it was fantastic. I'm glad the town accepted it. My understanding is they're still working on Thompson Avenue to kind of tweak to see if that will be ready in time for town meeting. That's the first issue. Any questions on that?
Mike, did you have a question? Just where's Thompson Avenue? Where's Thompson Avenue?
Off Winter Street, wire,
Oh, okay.
the back end of that was developed. I looked it up on the way.
I was just gonna look it up. Thank you.
All right, so moving along, we have for the town meeting, we have the option to accept the increased hotel tax. Presently, it is 4%. We're looking to see if the town will increase it to the current 6%, which is allowed by state law. It is also considered that that money that was raised from the hotel tax would be treated similar to the meals tax and be put in a separate account, which we can use at some other point after coming out of town meeting for approval.
Questions from FinCom? Yeah.
Mike, did you say that's comparable to what surrounding towns do?
Yes, and, you know, right now, we only have one hotel in town, and I understand the application has been put in for a second, but so we only have one hotel, so we haven't really lost all that much, but now is the time to get up to speed with the rest of the towns around us.
Questions from members of the public or comments? Christina?
There was an article for land taking by eminent domain, we voted tonight to remove that from town meeting, so that will not be an issue. Next, and this caused some debate last time, we talked about to see if the town will vote to raise or appropriate free cash, a sum of money to meet the appropriations for ensuring fiscal year and authorizing the assessor's office to use some and fixing the tax rate. We talked about this before, it is a form of tax relief for the citizens. We had a discussion about it, how this will come out, nobody really knows, but we're talking about putting a sum of money aside that basically the town will be voting themselves some tax relief. And we've been through this numerous times. It's not that the tax bill will go down, it just means that your taxes won't go up as high as they possibly can. And we'll see if the residents want to appropriate that. Sum of money has not yet been determined. We'll have that for the public hearing on March 28th. And as we had the discussion last time with some of the members of FinCom, some feel that we should use the money and not give tax relief, and others feel differently. So we'll see how that plays out.
Questions from FinCom? Questions or comments from members of the public? Don't see any.
Thank you. Moving along, we have the home rule petition to approve appropriate funds to the aid for the elderly for tax relief. We would have to seek see if the town will authorize us to do a home rule petition to the general legislature to give tax funding into the aid for the elderly. Presently, right now, the only way that money gets put into that fund is by donations. We did also have a work-off program where the town would allow seniors and those that are handicapped to work off work off some of their tax money by either volunteering at schools or the library, etc. And what happens over time is some people just become more disabled and unable to do that. So this would allow us to actually take some of our tax money, appropriate it if necessary, and allow some of our seniors to get tax relief. Presently, as you heard last time from Pam, the typical recipient of tax relief in town for the elderly is 88 years old. They lived in the town of Westwood for 60 years, and their value of the home is below the town average. It's roughly around $425,000. Those people are the people that we would be trying to focus the tax relief for. It's only to go to the legislature and see if we can get the legislature to allow us to do this as a town. Right now, there is presently no way to do this according to the laws of Massachusetts as of yet. I can tell you, there are presently 20 laws pending up on Beacon Hill, for some types of tax relief for seniors to allow it generally, but that hasn't happened yet, and there is no indication that it's going to happen this year. So we're going to go to the legislature on a home rule petition like we had before to at least ask if we could possibly do this.
Questions from FinCom?
Yeah, so it's something that probably won't even happen for next year, or and how long does it take for a home rule petition to work its way through?
Well, it really depends on the session. And a lot of the home rule petitions are done while in the summer session, and most of the people are there or not there. And It's not an extended session, so that's usually how home rule petitions go through, at least that's my understanding. So there is no time frame, but we don't see it happening this fiscal year. But we're hoping that at least for next fiscal year.
So we look at funding for it for next fiscal year.
Correct.
And in the meantime, the town is accepting donations into that fund
Yes, they are.
as they happen.
So just to clarify, if it were approved, it would then come back to the town in order to determine the appropriation figure?
Right, there is no money being asked on this one right now. It's simply to ask the town to give us the authority to ask the legislature to allow us to do this in the future.
And that would take a whole new vote.
We'd have an appropriation at town meeting just like we do for other investments.
Questions or comments from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Barbara Hayes, 10 Lower Drive. Is the fund that is raised from donations adequate?
Well, if you ask anyone, they'll say it's never adequate, but we do the best we can with what we have. There are people that, that just, by the time either they get to it, that we're out of money, or we try to do whatever we can, but we never have enough.
Are you able to meet the needs of people who feel need help?
Well, I would say that we're kind of limited as the amount we can give them, and I think Pam is here. Pam, would you like to speak to that? I'm sorry, about whether or not we're adequately able to fund those seniors that come to us?
Currently?
Yeah.
No, we're not. We try to reach out and get as many eligible applicants as we can for the fund. With what we have, we just try to spread the about 40,000 we get each year amongst those recipients. So it usually ranges from $800 to $1,500 for each person, which they are so appreciative of. But we'd certainly like to do more, perhaps get more applicants into the pool and be able to do a higher portion of those applicants' tax bills.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Brian Hart, Sexton Ave. I don't want to appear as a skin clencher or anything like that, but I have a problem with using or asking taxpayers to pay other people's taxes. This was set up as a charitable fund for people who voluntarily give to it. I just think it's not the right thing to do. Instead, take that money and apply it to a resident Clyde's tax relief. You do that, you also reduce their taxes. You could also look at spending, cut back on spending, reduce taxes further. Because as we spend more and more money, this present age relevant infirm account shrinks because we can't meet up with demand. I understand it's a noble idea and everything, but I just don't think it's right to ask because it's more than just the elderly and the infirm. There are people who have lost jobs, people on the edge. There are people who are going to fall between the cracks. They're going to be missed on that intent with just this year. And I think we should look more at across-the-board tax cuts, reducing everybody's taxes going forward.
Well, that was the article that we'd already put forth, an earlier article. This is a separate article just for the elderly and the infirm.
I'm saying tax relief, why should be provided across the board? We can't have special funds with refunding funds. There are other people out there who are hurt. And the best way to hit all of them, including the elderly and the infirm, is to just look at broad-based tax relief, such as what you're looking for appropriate for which I believe you're looking at $700,000 for this one. And I thought there was a mention of $200,000 for this one here.
There's no money on this right now. We took that money off the table because we don't think it'll happen this fiscal year. But all we're asking is that the amount to be determined, if any amount to be determined, will be by the town itself. And you'll be able to represent your position at that time. All we're asking is that the state give us the authority if the town so decides. We're not asking to put money in it right now. When that decision comes up, we'd be more than happy to.
We're paving the way for that money to be put in, right, is what we're doing at this point, so it leaves us open, and I would vote that the FinCom either votes no, or they vote for an indefinite postponement on this one.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Maureen Wood, 16 Fieldstone Road, and I'm on the Board of Assessors. And we actually think this is a very good idea. Oftentimes, the cases that come to us, people try to get abatements or things when they have a difficult situation. And we really don't have the tools to be able to help those situations. We'll listen, but really all we can do is look at values of properties. So this seemed to be a better tool, that if we can get this in place for the situations that really do need some relief. That's where we see it, but we don't have the tools downstairs to deal with it. So we think that this is a good idea.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the public? Oh, yes, yes, ma'am.
I just thought of something. In regard to the relief granted, is there any way of then recouping it once the person, for lack of a better way to put it, is passed on? And now their family's going to inherit property worth X without any past taxes due?
Forgive me, I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, I would say that, no. This would be an outright grant that we're giving to the individuals. There are other ways that individuals can, that qualify in a certain mass legislation, they can put in to have their taxes deferred. And we will collect those ultimately, but those are larger amounts usually. I mean, we've got some people who have put in pretty much their whole tax bill.
They're larger amounts, and it's a very narrow window of who qualifies for that. I think this is a little broader and would let them look more specifically at the circumstances. But yes, there are people in town that can defer their taxes. You just have to be careful. You don't want so many people doing that, but that's a big hole in your revenue, because then you're not getting taxes from all those houses. So
I was thinking more if we were charitably donating, that there'd be a method of recoupment once the property's sold.
Well, it goes with the individual, so if the individual has to apply, so if that individual passes on, obviously they're not going to get that tax relief the following year. I don't know if that answers your question.
Mary, I would love if Tam could comment on the type of people who are the recipients, how long they've been in town, and can you comment on the people who the aid, the elderly, has actually given money to? You know, you had data on the duration of their time in Westwood, their age. Who's really, who are we targeting here?
Yep, yep. I mean, this fund has been in place now, I think about 15 years. And every year we go through the list of applicants. These are, you know, our older seniors. You know, we're all living longer now, but these are, you know, people in their late 80s, 90s that come in on this list who have lived in town 50, 60 years. These are long time residents of town. To do the tax deferral, you have to take out a lien on your house. Some of these people, you know, do not want to take the lien. It's just not something that they're comfortable with. They're not comfortable with kind of going through that whole process of what that involves. A lot of the people here, the recipients, we have to, you know, have them come and you know, a lot of them, their neighbors recommend their names to this list, or from the Council on Aging, they'll recommend to us that this is someone who does need help. They do have to give us their income. We take a look at that as part of the evaluation process. There is a board who sits and distributes this fund. And much like our other funds in town, the community charity fund that helps certain people, you know, this is something that particularly helps people with that annual tax bill. And if you saw the individuals on this list, and if you saw the handwritten notes that they send back, they are so appreciative. They really do feel like it is the town saying to them, we appreciate what you did in kind of helping the town develop. We want you to stay in town. You know, they want to remain in their house, and this is just one way that helps them do it.
Any other questions, comments from FinCom? Yeah.
If this is approved by the state and we set up our fund, is there any approximate amount that we're thinking would satisfy? So right now it's about $40,000 worth of contributions. Is it twice that? Is it 10 times that? Or have we not assessed that? I mean, if this goes forward, what are we looking at as a sufficient amount to help people?
we don't have a set amount in mind, but it's in the, maybe 2 to 3 times that 40,000. It's not 10 times that amount. We do think just, being able to bump that up more, that we had, maybe 100 to 150,000 a year to address that pool, that we could get more applicants into that, and that we could also give a bit more than that we're giving now.
Chairman Law, yeah, Jim.
I'm sorry. Pam, you mentioned that they don't want to go through the lien process. What is the lien process?
What's the lien process? Just wanted to follow up on when someone mentioned tax deferral. There is a state program that allows seniors under certain income guidelines that they can defer their taxes until they sell their home. So they don't have to pay their taxes each year, and then when they do sell their home, all the taxes are paid at that point. But they do have to file paperwork with the Board of Assessors. A lien is filed on the property at the Registry of Deeds, so that we make sure that the town does get the money back when the property is sold. So it's just that some people really, of that generation, that's how the program works. You put the lien on, but some of them really, would not do it just for that purpose.
How does that differ from someone who just doesn't pay their taxes? Does the town take any different
Someone doesn't
action?
pay their taxes. So the deferral is, once you are accepted into that program, and again, state guidelines. So if you fit the guidelines, you file the paperwork, and we put the lien, then every year your taxes just kind of go into the deferral account. We don't come, looking for the money from you. We know you're in deferral, and when that house is sold, the bill is paid as well as interest. With someone who doesn't pay their property tax, once that goes into tax title, we also put a lien on the property at that time. That's the way that the town is protected.
For the tax deferral, is there a certain amount of time for which they have to sell their house, or is it indefinite?
No. And so, probably the typical time if someone's in deferral, might be 5 years.
And then the other option was if they don't pay the tax, you also put a lien on it. Does the town at any time foreclose on it?
So the one main difference, and again, the tax deferral is a state program, the interest rate on that is a 4% rate. And for tax liens, if you're in tax title, the interest rate is 16%. And we can move as quickly as we want on the tax title process.
How fast does the town do you?
Usually about 5 years.
I mean, we are always trying to pursue that bill. It's not a fast process to kind of go towards foreclosure and take the property, but with that bill, we would always be kind of, working with someone, trying to get a payment plan in place, looking to collect that bill. As opposed to the deferral, once you're in that program, we're waiting until, making sure we have a good lien, and then, waiting until the property is sold.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What will happen to this fund as it exists now? Should this go through, will you still be able to contribute on the
Yes.
private side as well? And one more question, is this an approved, interest bearing account that's set up, approved as it is now, and would it be so if the town contributes to it?
I'm sure it would, but the interest rates are so low, it's pretty minimal.
No, I'm just curious if it would be.
Yeah, right now, it's, whatever we take in, Brian, we're allocating out every year.
So there's
So there's no
no
balance.
turnover, there's no time.
There's no time.
But with larger sums, you might be able to get ahead of
Yeah,
larger sums.
it's not our intent, though. It's our intent to, if people give to this account right now, or if town meeting voted, that we're pushing that right out every fiscal year to those bills.
Okay. Yes, ma'am?
I would be in favor of the petition going through, but is there any way to make the letter that goes out any more compelling to Westwood residents to contribute? This is sort of an aside, but I just wonder if that might be a possibility.
Mr. Walsh?
We are working on that effect.
You are.
Yes,
Okay, I think we can move on to the next article, please.
thank you. Next article has to do with the Complete Streets program that we talked about and we passed at the last town meeting. This article is looking for money to design a sidewalk along Gay Street and a sidewalk along Route 109
from Millbrook to Pond Street, and presently the kids have to cross over one side of the street, walk on that side, and come back on the other side. So the town is looking to get the money to design that and gate and sidewalks on Gate Street. So we're asking for town approval. I think that number is not yet determined, but will be an approximate number for design.
Questions from FinCom? Questions or comments from members of the public? I see none.
Thank you. Moving along, we have the collection bin bylaw. We do not presently have one in town. They are referred to as UDCs, or Unattended Donation Collections Center, containers. You see them all over town. This will give the town a little bylaw, give us the right to permit them so that we know who owns them, the condition of them, make sure that it looks appropriate for where they're located. So we're going to be asking the town to allow the board of selectmen to issue licenses to these companies to place them on properties somewhere throughout the town and be able to regulate them.
Questions from FinCom? Questions?
Oh, okay, no, never mind, I see the answer. I was asking who administered it, building commissioner.
Questions, sir? Christine?
Hi, Claire Milkowski, 320 Dover Road. This is a great idea. I'm in the recycling business, and there are many towns that work with, there are actually 3 companies in the local area that collect books and textiles, and they pay the hosts. And I'm just concerned about one line in here under prohibition. It says, they're prohibited from being kept on or within blah, 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 other public property by any person or entity other than the town of Westwood. Would that prohibit the DPW or the school department from contracting with one of these companies that will pay? Because this is something that many towns are doing now to raise money for their school departments and municipalities and any other designated charity. The rates are currently between $100 and $160 a ton. And several surrounding towns have school programs. I believe, I've heard through the grapevine that there was some discussion about doing that program in our town because it raises thousands of dollars for the, whether it's the school department or the PTO. So I wonder if the intent of that is to prohibit like parking lots, such as the one down in Islington where there are currently some containers. Would those be prohibited by this, or would the town departments have the authority to authorize placement of these containers in town parking lots?
Thank you. I would say that in just reading this language, it says other than the town of Westwood, but I think if we entered into a contract with someone, that would really be town authorized at that point in time.
Okay, so it has to be subcontracted,
Yeah,
and it would be under the auspices.
I would say that would not be unreasonable based on the language that's there.
Yes, sir.
Steve Oman, planning board. I think this is very good. I want to use one of these things, and I stood there reading everything that's said on there, because I just have a few questions that I wanted to know, like, is this a nonprofit organization? You know, is there anything going to be resold? And if it's not resellable, will it be recycled rather than just thrown out? And you couldn't get the answer to all of it, because that's very confusing. So with this, we could maybe get some uniformity here, and we would know, be able to find out simple answers to these things.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
Just to address that, Steve, they will never throw anything away that has any value. And even if you put in ripped clothing or something with a coffee stain on it, as long as it's clean and dry, if it can't be resold as clothing, it will be shredded to make insulation or new fibers cut up into wiping cloths. So there's a wide range of textiles that, if they can't be resold, they can be put to other uses.
Right, but do they all do that?
Oh, yeah, because they're gonna have to pay to dispose of it, and they will get paid to, I mean, they'll even get paid to send it to a shredder to make it into insulation, so.
Thank you. Anything else on this one? No affirmative responses?
Moving on, we have the police station headquarters. Do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, it's okay, I'll just speak from here. So I know Mike and Mike were here a couple weeks ago and gave an updated presentation on the police headquarters. We're not going to walk through that again tonight, but a few things I wanted to update you on. We'll have 2 public meetings. One is this Thursday at the Downey School in the evening, 7:30 start time. And the other will be at the middle school cafeteria on the 24th. And hopefully, the public is seeing a lot of publicity on this. We're certainly pushing out a lot of information. There was a cover story in the Hometown Weekly. There's a Facebook notification, posters have been put up around town. And we really, really do want to have people come out and ask questions. I'm not going to go through the details that you've all heard before, but the project and its components have not changed. It is out to bid. The bids, the sub-bids are coming in. We'll have final bids and choose the entity we will award the contract to after a successful town meeting vote, we hope. We'll have that identified for you for your next public hearing at the end of the month. What else I want to tell you, the Scout House has been acquired by the town. The Scout House will be coming down soon. It's been emptied out of its contents. It will come down this month. You'll start seeing tree work for the enabling project to do the Deerfield Avenue extension and establishing the parking lots that we need to then facilitate getting the construction site ready for the police headquarters. Again, should it be approved in town meeting. So we really, other than the same old, we're still looking at a 30-year bond. The article that will be before you, before town meeting, is a borrowing article. And the borrowing article requires 2/3 vote. And we are not doing this outside of 2 1/2, so we will not need an override ballot vote, so it will just be town meeting.
Questions from FinCom? Questions or comments from members of the public? Yes, sir.
Brian Hunt, Sexton Ave, bids in the police station?
The bids will be coming in middle of next week, 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, Brian, we'll have them all in and determine the successful bidder before March 28th. Is that the Monday?
Yes.
So we will have the final number for your consideration and for town meeting vote.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, moving along, we have the home rule petition to enforce fines for double poles. That has been removed from the warrant. We also have possible property transfers in Islington. That also has been removed from the warrant. So we will not be addressing those. Our next one has to do with the home rule petition for the sale of wine for off-premises consumption at the farmer's market. You may recall we did approve this at town meeting before. This is just another section of it to clean it up. It was approved in November 2014 to adopt Chapter 138, Section 15F, permitting the sale of wine at the farmer's market for off-site consumption. It was subsequently discovered, and it's required that we have this additional language in there for a home rule petition.
Questions from FinCom? Questions or comments from members of the public? Yes? Yes, sir.
Can I go back to the double pole one and ask? They've introduced bills about double poles and other related things every year for a number of years.
Yes,
And
none of them have gone through.
Is there any hope for it this year?
It is part of the Governor Baker and the Governor's Office on the MMA Act, the Modernization Municipal Act, and it is part of that. And every year, you have the utilities defeating this up on Beacon Hill, so that the entire law, which is 300-something pages long, has that in it to address it. So rather than try to reduplicate, no pun intended, of course, to that act, we're just going to leave it until see what happens with the amendment. Okay, I think most of the last one for me is the amendment to the general bylaws, chapter, section 321 for retail stores. Basically, this has to do with operation of stores. Right now, the bylaws limits the hours of operations for retail business to 6 a.m. and 12 midnight, and prohibits trash removal, deliveries, loading, unloading between the hours of midnight and 6. This article would have the same restrictions to non-retail businesses, and it really is because residents have been complaining about emptying commercial dumpsters too early in the morning. So this would stop that from happening for the residents.
questions or comments from FinCom? Questions or comments from residents? Is that all you have?
That's all I
Chris?
have this evening.
All right, with that, this hearing is continued until tomorrow evening. Mr. Gillette?
Could I ask if you could take up the stone ice, simply because Todd's here?
Sure. Okay, we're not quite prepared, but we will be in just a moment, Mr. Gillette. Yeah. This has been previously sent to members, but putting it in front of you now. Is Todd going to present on this?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Go ahead.
We had put forth a request to spend up to $225,000 to cover this year's current snow budget. And I know that everybody's proceeded as a quiet account with it, but we've had, a few events that have lasted hours on edge, and used quite a bit of material this year. And, with respect to the surrounding communities and whatnot, we're pretty much exactly where they are, if not a little bit below. So we've been efficient with our material and our usage of our contractors, but the matter is, when we have a few events, the dollars add up pretty quickly. So
Not as bad as last year.
no, not really.
And we can guarantee there's no more stuff.
No, don't even say that.
Really, Mark? I know.
Yeah, so Todd, on one of those storms I saw, I think DPW, cutting limbs and doing some preventative, does that get put in this kind of storm?
No.
No, it's purely snow.
It was purely snow, yeah. I mean, that was unique in itself, that we were maxed out with our contractors and our staff in-house. And we actually had to pull people out of the equipment to go out and then grab a chainsaw and start dealing with that and everything, so. Kind of a testament to our staff and how they're spread out through any different type of event. It's just a quick, I know we've been here for a while, but in the past, people were required as to putting a price per inch in a storm. I think if we compare, obviously we spent approximately $400,000 this year. In comparison to last year, everybody would perceive that as, oh my God, well, last year was so much more, but we've had smaller events, but they've lasted longer. I said this last year, you can have a 6-inch storm that costs you $10,000, or a 6-inch storm that costs you $110,000, and it just depends on how long the storm itself lasts and it hits and gets that duration. So.
Any other questions from FinCom? Yes, sir?
Jim Martin, 41 West Street Terrace. I've lived down there for 40 years. I know the gentleman to your right, okay, but he was this big. But in any event, that last storm that came through, where we had a tree across Pond Street, we had trees across a lot of streets that we didn't know were obviously going to happen. And I want to thank the DPW for their fast reaction.
Very nice, sir. Thank you for that. Are people prepared to vote? Is there a motion to?
Make a motion.
Okay, up to 225,000. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That carries. Anything else, Mr. Gillette?
No, thank you very much. I
Motion
appreciate
is
it.
continued until tomorrow night. Motion to adjourn. Is it seconded? Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
I'll tell you, will be one.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.